Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Indian Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from the Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me are Jerry Arnell and Valerie Werhun. The assessor today is Jeremy Pohl, and the administrative personnel is Phoebe Graywood. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you'll be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will be then permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items through 4 through 8 on our docket today. Ms. Graywood, please affirm the assessors and applicants' testimony.
Please state your full name.
Jeremy Reinhold.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. The first property on today's agenda is 1850 Main Street. So, Mr. Pohl, you can begin on that.
File number is 243012. Roll number is 110212690000. 1850 Main Street. The 2025 assessed values for $2,317,000. Built in 1975. 2 floors, no elevator. It's an office medical clinic. The leasable area is the same as the gross area, which is 13,592 square feet. From my understanding, it was owner occupied prior to a sale, and it was run as a clinic. And within the banner of the clinic, there was other individuals in that space. So we'll kind of go with that today as we go along. On page 2 is the review of the sale. We can see on April 13, 2022, it was sold for $1.2 million. I investigated the sale. It does appear that it was a transaction that there was no issues with, but there are a couple of anomalies that I just want to go over. On page 3 shows that the mortgage that they have was $1,750,000. They actually went above the sale price by a sum of $550,000, which is atypical. Usually you have a mortgage for around whatever the sale price is minus your commercial down payment of usually 30% or so around there. So to have it be above by $550,000 seems quite out of line. Not sure why. As we go along on page 4, we see that the consideration was 1.2 million. As we go further along, the rest of the documents just continues to confirm what the sale price was. So fair market was on page 11, 1.2 million paid. So there is no issue with the consideration, or that it was a arm's length transaction. We looked at it, it is, and it was, other than the mortgage value is significantly higher than what they paid for it. If we continue along, on page 13, starts
Which-
the item that was sent to them. Or sorry.
What page number was that?
Page 19.
19?
Page
Okay.
19.
All right.
Sent on May 4th, 2022. Just indicates that the ID that we sent. Obviously, it was the new ownership group that is now in place. So on page 23, some additional information. This is what I was able to determine. Looks like 4th floor is Dr. Conrad. 2nd floor is the ownership group. If you look on the next page, 24 shows, and I'll use and no disrespect to anyone. This was the only listing that I could find for this property as far as advertising, and it was literally on Facebook. I looked the usual leasing mechanisms. There wasn't any. So this is the best I could determine, that they're looking for $14.50 to $17 net. $14.50, $17.50 net, so around a $3 range to enter into the property. And on page 25 shows from their website, they're looking to get a mix now of professional tenants, which are both medical and obviously office. So from my understanding, the purchaser is a law firm. They're occupying part of the building. Okay. And just so we know, I've driven by this property on Main Street. I live at the Riverbend area twice a day, every day for like 20 years. Fairview Medical, Fairview Clinic, as we see on page 26, has been there the whole time, as far as I can remember. And today, some almost 3 years after the sale, that signage is identical. It hasn't changed. We know that the transaction occurred where the former owner was Fairview, owner occupied. They sold the property. The new owner, law firm, moved in and are now trying to lease the property. And for some reason, nearly 3 years after, the identical signage of the former owner is still indicating they're there. From my understanding from the pictures and review of the property from Mr. Smith is that they're there on a limited basis, very limited basis, but it doesn't seem to fit why there would be the signage that we see as and what's being indicated here. So it's a bit of another anomaly that you gotta consider. The next couple of pages just shows the subject property as far as the location. It is an older building, built in again 1975. It does appear to be in good shape, right facing, like there's no real issues with it as far as the age of it. You know, there in any building that looks to be some R&M as indicated from Mr. Smith's brief. I don't doubt that. I haven't been in the building to verify that, but I have no owner occupied building that's been owner occupied for a while. I would see some deferred maintenance in it. So that's what I think the condition of the property is most likely. But how would this play out in the marketplace? We see it being leased out or attempted to be leased or advertised out and leased out on a very limited basis. We see that the law firm who purchased the property is owner occupying the segment of it. We see that the former tenant, the former owner who was the business operating, the way concern out of it, still has their complete signage up. And from my understanding, has a very, very limited space within the main floor. So there's a bit of pause on that. I'm looking at the sale at 1.2 million. Typically, if you sell owner occupied, you vacate the property total. And the property owner, whether they occupy it or in whole or in part, or go to lease it, there's an active leasing. They're trying to generate money on it, obviously. I don't really see that here. To have a former tenant remain up and their business signage up. And some 3 years later is very strange, so. I'll leave it at that. So to determine what it would go for on the open market, I'd have to look and see what it was, how it was operated prior, how it could be operated now. And we see that it was run as an office medical clinic. I would continue to do so, or you could also get simply office tenants in there on however you want to make it up. But if you're gonna do a medical clinic, you would probably have to have one banner and then lease out similar to what was either there or other buildings in the marketplace where there's one banner that encompasses the clinic, and then you lease out to individual doctor rooms within the clinic. At the end of the day, you would have one CRU. You would have one demisable CRU, which would have obviously one entity running it and associates working underneath that entity. So whether they be arm's length or not internally, that's a different matter. There would be one lease in place. So when I went out to the marketplace, I looked at I stuck with the end of Henderson Main Street area, as it's very similar end of Main Street. And if you look across the river in Henderson, very similar marketplaces. I looked for leases that are in the market. We looked at 20 leases, some 8 or 9 properties, mix of office and medical tenancies. It's like they're if the best way to operate was as a one banner, as it was prior as an owner occupier, or if you're going to cut it up into smaller CRUs, you'd still be looking at this marketplace. So what we see is for a total of 29,300 or so square feet of leased area approaching the reference date. We have an average of $18.15, $18.30, and a median of $18.50 with a min-max of 14 and 22. These are, I would consider, better than the second property. So property would be at the very low end of the range, given its age, given its vintage, given its tenancy, as being an owner occupier prior. But this would be the marketplace. So if you would do significant tenant improvements, you would improve the space, you'd be looking more into this range. But this is the market as we see for Main Street and Henderson. So when we look over on page 30, which starts to work up, we see for the 13,592 square feet, we have a $12.67 rent attached to it, which produces a PGI of 172,332. So at that point, when I'm reviewing this, I get pause. It is at the low end of the range. It is far below the low end of the range. I don't think the model is incorrect as far as the vintage of the property. The lower end rent is appropriate. I don't feel there is need to change the rent. So we're moving on that. We have a vacancy of 6% applied to the property, which gives effective gross income of $161,992. Expenses at 3%, shortfall at $8, produces a net operating income of $150,608, capped at 6.5%, gets us back to our $2,317,000. So from this point, it's a pretty simple exercise. The building did have a sale for 1.2 million. The mortgage on it is 550,000 on top of that. We see, I don't want to say no active marketing because it was on Facebook that I found, but I mean, realistically, there really isn't any active marketing for this that I found. We see a building that may need to have a bit of R&M, given that there was a long-term owner occupying the property. And then obviously, going hand in hand with limited marketing is, why is there signage up? The former owner who transferred it an arm's length sale, why is there complete signage up nearly 3 years after the fact? So with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you, as you had mentioned, you hadn't had the opportunity to inspect the property.
No, I was considering it, but you showed pictures in your brief, which didn't necessarily need for me to come to the property. They were quick hit.
Okay, so you're not familiar with the interior other beyond the photos that have been shown?
Not beyond the photos, yes.
Okay. And there's no dispute that the sale is An arm's length transaction, on the open market.
I verified the
exposed to market,
sale.
et cetera.
I
It's all there
verified
in
the
your
sale,
brief.
as you see it, everything looked proper.
Okay. So I guess the main question, first question, then is property was exposed to the market, sold for 1.2 million. And it's assessed at nearly double that, 2.3 million. Can you explain the reasoning behind that?
I can't explain the reason, let me correct one, let me rephrase one part of that. I'm not sure if this was marketed by a real estate agent. This was just a coming of a number from two parties that knew each other. I don't know how long the exposure was on the marketplace. I couldn't tell you that. All I can tell you is that it was an arm's length transaction, but it appeared from my check.
Okay, well, I will discuss those other parts of my presentation, but thank you. All right, so it is arm's length transaction. Did you interview the parties involved with the transaction? Because you obviously have some questions about it that you had brought up with regard to signage, loan amount, etc. Did you talk to the vendor and purchaser?
No, I didn't. I verified it through what I've shown in the brief as well as yourself and the guiding that was sent forth by the group.
Okay. And the marketing of the property that you have indicated on page 24, did you speak to the agent involved?
No, it was merely a scan of the marketplace and I didn't find anything, just to be clear. Any Google search, any real estate search, I didn't find anything active. This was merely on Facebook search, which seems highly odd. So to me, it doesn't seem like it's well actively marketed.
Okay, that's fair, but you haven't investigated the reasons behind that, I guess. Haven't spoken with the owner, so, okay. Looking at the area the property is in, are there many office facilities on North Main Street?
As far as no, there's limited
Properties
stock.
for lease.
Limited stock, I would say.
Okay, are there any new properties that have been constructed in probably decades?
There was a few. There was obviously the one at on Main Street, so my office.
536.
3536 Main Street, but generally it is a older stock. You don't have the reinvestment.
In terms of being a economically and socially somewhat disadvantaged area in terms of comparison to other
No,
areas.
I just think the demographics of the area doesn't have the incomes the way that other areas do. You have doctors that prefer to be in this, quite frankly, in the south end of the city, and that's where a lot of them are. So
Okay. And the comparables that you have, so just looking at these, and I will have rebuttal later for these, but the bulk of these are on Henderson Highway, correct?
Henderson and Maine were and obviously Bonner's just off Henderson. But yeah, these are the main block that we have. There's a bit more on Henderson than on Main Street.
So when I go through these, there's essentially one building on Main Street, right? 2536 Main Street?
Correct.
Okay. And just and I'll cover this off a bit in rebuttal, but just looking at these comparables, so 2536 Main Street, would you know when that one was built?
Yeah, it was built in bear with me here. 2010.
Okay. And is that the head office or office space for a credit union with some additional rental space?
No, that's a separate role. That's a separate role. There's a credit union head of that. There's a secondary role. This is off Main Street.
Yeah.
Off of Red River Drive. You have access to Red River Drive. You can drive through the sites, sometimes they're blocked off with a gauge kind of thing, sliding gate. So it's
Right. 755 Henderson Highway equally, that would be a considerably newer property built in 2016, correct?
yeah, let me be clear, the comparables are greater than
Okay.
the subject property. Like I indicated, the rental rates are what they are, but the subject property would be inferior as far as aging and vintage.
All right, I'm not going to run through each of them here then, as we've kind of covered that off. Looking at the capitalization rate that's applied to the subject property, 6.5%. So when I look at the market participants, Colliers, CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, 6.5% is typically towards the lower end of their suburban B classification. Would that seem to jive with the subject property profile, location, type of tenants that they would draw, investment demand in that area?
It is mid to lower, but you also have to look at the rental rate that was put in place. We're looking at a $12 rent. We're not looking at an $18 rent or a $16 rent. We're looking at a lower end rent for any doctor who would need to occupy our office. If you're going to convert it over just simply office, certain CRUs, if you're going to do that or have a mix of, you're looking at a $12, $13 range. So that risk to the $12 or $13 range needs to be reflected in cap.
So jumping back quickly to the comparables, so you'd indicated you drive past this property every day, so you're resident kind of somewhat in that area.
To be clear, I don't have an eagle eye on this for 20 years.
No.
I literally drive by it.
No,
twice
and
a
I'm
day.
not
But I
not
wouldn't-
suggesting you do. So you would equally then be familiar with property about 2 blocks south of this, 1750 Main, another
I
2-story medical office
I
clinic
did.
built about the same time frame.
I have my former doctor, Jack Nikon, operated out of it. I was attending his office since I was 8 till about he retired a few years ago, so I'm well aware.
Okay. Fair enough. So that property was appealed in this cycle and has arm's length leases. I'm wondering why that was not included in the evidence.
So looked at the property, the arm's length leases were ways away from the reference date. As well as I believe Mr. Nikon vacated his practice at the back, developed another property a few blocks down, sold his practice and retired, which left a large hole in the vacancy. I didn't feel like the leases in place were reflective of pushing the reference date. And when I'm looking at the actual model rent that we put on it at around a $12 or so range, it's very reasonable. I'm not looking at the model is like 16 or 17.
Yeah.
In that range. I pause on that, but I saw no need to change the rental rate.
Yeah, to be clear, the rents in that property would be below the modeled rate that's applied to the subject, right? They'd be 10 and or under.
To be clear, we've handled that one this cycle, and we don't have that in my evidence. We don't have that in your evidence either.
Would it be the most comparable property on North Main to the subject property?
Most likely, I would, yeah.
Built in 1977, about the same size in terms of useful area.
The use of the building, the dimensions of the building, the location, it would be the most comparable. Yes.
Okay, and that building has an elevator?
There's stairs. I don't believe there's a stretch my memory here.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Arnell, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Werhan.
Mine have been answered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I got just wondering about the leasable area. The owner seems to report a lower leasable area. On page 19, the owner reports a total building area of 12,339, and rentable area of 9,400 and change. Do you know what the difference is in the leasable areas to what you have?
What we have is what we have on record. There may have been with the, and I stress this respectfully, with the limited real estate activity that they had for leasing, they may have someone come in and review it. And they may have someone come in and review it on a perspective of if it were to be separate CRUs, they would put a thought in place or plan in place to have certain common areas and back that out. I can't comment on why the areas are as such. Don't know. The physical building areas haven't changed. I just think that this was kind of perhaps a prospective plan. And you would obviously be coming up with what a floor layout would be, and you would subtract your common areas, but I can't comment any further than that.
Okay, and then on your evaluation, then you have a 300 square foot area. What is that area used for?
I couldn't comment on what the area was used for. My understanding was it was the entire Fairview Medical Clinic. There may have been.
Okay. And then
But this is just the way the it's worked out. As you can see, the 300 square feet is a little higher, given that it's 300 square feet, but realistically, for the 13,592 square feet, we have $12.67 overall. So that's how I was looking at it from the perspective of the total building. But I couldn't comment on whether it was 300 square foot. Bid.
okay, and then the 6496 is the rest of the space on the main floor, is it?
That would be obviously main and upper.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
So
All right. Thank you very much for that. Then, Mr. Smith, you can present your evidence.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So 1850 Main Street. I will get you to flip to my page number 3 to start with. For a bit of background on the property. So it was originally built in 1975. I do not at this time have further information with regard to the leasable area. There is an issue with there being considerable common area space, which would lead to there being a lower leasable area in the property once that's all determined, but we weren't able to include that in the report. So that likely speaks to that question that you had, Mr. Chair, with regard to the leasable area. It is likely smaller than the 13,592 once it's in a state to be marketed for lease, but we can't include that specifically at this time. Property was appealed in the last cycle and was confirmed remarkably, and was appealed to the municipal board. And so here we are again, 2025, sold for 1.2 million in 2022, towards the end in April 2022. And it's being valued at almost double the actual market value, sale value of the property. So just to be clear, there is no question with regard to the arm's length nature of the transaction or anything else involved. I've given you the definition of market value that is adhered to by appraisers in the market. It's all there for you to read on my page number 3. Each of those parameters is met by the sale. It was marketed for sale by a main commercial brokerage beginning in 2021. 2021, and had significant exposure to the market. The agent involved had over 20 tours of the property, with no interest in proceeding to any potential offer to purchase based on the nature of the property and the challenges that any purchaser would face in acquiring it. hence the $1.2 million ultimate sale value, which we'll get into in a minute. So it is arm's length transaction, was exposed to the market. There's no special financing, and it did sell quite close to the reference date at April 13th, 2022, as you can see. Now, background background on the property itself, and leading into that sale. Property was originally built for a chartered accountancy firm called Turnbull and Turnbull. That was built in 1975. They occupied the building as a single occupant. It was designed for them as a single occupant. They had their a lot of their admin on the main floor, their computer room, storage, filing, things of that nature, and a few individual offices. And then the second floor was office space as well. There was no elevator that was put in, and of course, it being built in 75, it wasn't designed with accessible washrooms or anything of that nature, which would be required by today's code in order to multi-tenant a building. You have to provide access to the multiple floors and access to the required bathrooms, etc. So the property was designed and intended for use as a single occupant building. It traded from that chartered accountancy firm later on to the medical clinic. Now, there were various partners in that medical clinic, and the medical clinic was specific somewhat to rehabilitation. So you would go to the main floor of the property, get assessed for your particular health challenge, and then go up to the second floor for rehabilitation work, etc. They put in well, it's largely an open plan second floor, so they put in some flooring in the middle that facilitated the type of rehabilitation work that was required. There are offices along the perimeter of the property on the second floor, but that is the basic layout. So in order for the property to become a multi-tenant property and to be marketed as a multi-tenant property, significant changes and upgrades would be required in order to meet code requirements that would enable the multi-tenancy. These include installation of an elevator system, very significant cost. You have installation, renovation of bathrooms to meet the accessibility requirements. The current HVAC system is a legacy electric baseboard heating system. That would obviously need to be changed in order to and upgraded to an HVAC system. Roof-mounted HVAC system with multiple units in order to put in multiple tenancies, put in all the ductwork required for that. And then you have all of the additional demising and electrical work that would be required in order to facilitate multiple tenancy. Beyond that, they also have issues with the parking lot where it's subsiding, and the drainage is essentially collapsing, so that needs rebuilding. Their roof is near the end of its life cycle and will require replacement in the next couple of years. So those are structural issues, but the main point being, in order to convert to multiple tenancy, they have a significant amount of work to do. That being the HVAC issue in particular, probably reworking electrical for the individual units as they would be built out. The elevator to be installed for the second level, and the accessibility for bathrooms and things of that nature. Now, so what the purchaser has acquired here essentially is a single occupant building that they don't require the entire use of. They are a law firm, but they're not a larger law firm. They occupy roughly half of the space on the second floor in total. It's a wide open space, so they're in the whole thing if you want to consider it in that way, but truly they only occupy about half of it. Many, I would say at least half of the offices are vacant, and a very considerable portion of the open area is vacant as well, which you'll see in the photos. The main floor is vacant, with the exception, as Mr. Cole mentioned, one of the partners of the medical clinic has elected to stay on in a very small unit at the very back of the property on a limited time basis. He's not on a hard and fast lease. It's kind of a month-to-month situation, but he continues to operate out of there. So the main floor is essentially vacant. They have had a month-to-month tenancy in there that was paying $10 per square foot net at one point. But that again was a month-to-month situation. The other issue with regard to conversion to multi-tenancy is the common area of the building. The way that it was designed for the single occupant is not obviously ideal for multiple tenancy, and they would be looking at essentially 32% common area, 32% gross up. Typically for an office building, you'd be looking at 15%, 18%, somewhere in that range. So that leads to additional costs for any potential tenants as well. So that is the background. The property has not been changed since purchase. It hasn't been invested in. It's a long-term project essentially, in that the owner is looking at probably about a minimum of $1 million investment in order to bring it up to the stage where they would be able to market it for lease in order to draw tenants to the property. So that is the situation. The changes that they've made, they've painted some of the space that they're in. They've repaired some ceiling tiles, things of that nature. There's been no upgrading or changes really to the property. So let's look quickly at the photos beginning on page 5. You can see the exterior. Page 6, there's the side parking lot. And we move into the interior. You have the lobby area, which is quite large. Vacant space on the main floor there. And we move into the second floor. You have the original carpeting from the property from long ago. This hasn't been changed. That's what the majority of the office units look like. As you can see, some of them are occupied, some of them are vacant. Page 9, that's the main floor hallway running on the south side of the building. And then we have a photo of the doctor's single unit at the back of the property at the very bottom of page 9. So just some remaining photos, and as you can see, it really hasn't been changed. You can see the open area on the second floor at the top of page 11. See the very sparse use as indicated, and the old style staff room there as well. So that is the property. Let's move forward. The site is shown on page 12, and more importantly, the location on page 13. So as I alluded to in some of my questioning there, we're on North Main here. There are very few office facilities in this area, certainly no new ones that I can think of that have been constructed in recent time. The reason for that is demand. There's very limited demand for office space on North Main, and the rents that you would be able to charge in this area wouldn't be supportive of building any new space. Hence, you don't get any construction in the area, and the properties are of the vintage of the subject. And they tend to be older and somewhat dated, obviously, as shown from the photos. all of this leading to lower rental values. So let's move into the valuation itself. I've already alluded to one property that I didn't have access to initially. It's the most comparable to the subject. Very similar in size, built in 1977, comparing to the subject 75. Located at 1750 Main, two-story medical clinic, almost exactly the same size in terms of leasable area. It's a medical office. And they have rents in that facility of $8.56 up to $10 per square foot, with some main floor retail type tenancies that were getting $13. When I looked at the age of the rents, they were ranged between 2019 and 2022 on the rent roll that I was looking at. So that is my verbal discussion of that property. It is the most similar to the subject. It's the closest in terms of proximity. It's on the same side of the road even, same type of use. So that is the background there. Looking at page 15, we have my rental rate study. The challenge in getting comparable leases to the subject is obviously there's extremely limited market in that area, so we don't have North Main leases either. But what we tried to do is show you an indication of what suburban office space will go for at the lower end of the market in better locations, typically better buildings. So looking at page 15 and 16, you can see the properties that we have there, some in Southwest Winnipeg. There are a few that are downtown, some on Portage Avenue. And typically we're looking in that $10.50, $12 per square foot rental rate range for superior properties located in better locations. This carries on to page number 15 as well, as you can see. And then we just have some market stats for suburban office rents from Colliers International. Now, I would take this a little bit with a grain of salt. They do indicate an average rent of $14.75 per square foot, but that for Class C suburban, but again, that would be typically superior buildings in better locations than the subject property. Again, the subject property is a single tenant property, so as it currently stands, could not be leased out to other tenancies due to the code requirements. There would be no occupancy granted to the subject for those issues. So you'd essentially be looking at a tenancy of 13,500 square feet. We have placed a rental rate of $10 per square foot on the subject property. Again, the most comparable property just down the road is achieving $8.56 to $10 per square foot. And the subtenant that they had on a very limited month-to-month basis was paying $10 per square foot as well in the subject property. Moving on, we're looking at vacancy, page 17, Class C suburban. We're looking at 10.3 to 5.5%. Class B suburban, 11.7 to 18.7%. The subject property, again, single occupant, you have the situation where it actually can't be leased in its current format. So we have increased the vacancy rate in tandem with the market stats to 15% in our evaluation to reflect this fact. Our expense allowance is 5%. We've covered this many times. I leave it up to your discretion. And the shortfall that we had utilized was $8 per square foot in our value. Let's move on to capitalization rate. So looking at page 19, this particular asset class wouldn't be covered in the main brokerage's cap rate studies. It would be a Class C suburban. Looking at the ranges that we have here, Class B suburban, we have Colliers indicating 7.5% to 8.5% in their data. We have CBRE indicating 7 to 8%. And we have Cushman Wakefield indicating 6.75 to 7.75%. What we have is a single occupant building on North Main that can't actually be leased as multi-tenant at the time, at the valuation date and currently as well. So obviously that is going to fall towards the upper end of the range. Beyond that, we've given you our own cap rate study at the bottom of page 19, ranging between 6.3 and 8.4% for offices. And we, as always, have the significant increase of over 4% in interest rates as of the valuation date, obviously driving increased mortgage lending rates. And correlated with that is an increase in capitalization rates as well. So as summarized there, we have a single occupant building, not be able to receive occupancy permits without very significant investment into the property. And it is in the location that it is in. So we have used a capitalization rate of 7.5%, not at the very upper end of the range of what is presented, but certainly more reflective of the subject than 6.5%, which I suspect with the model is likely based somewhat on age and size. Our summary is presented on page number 20, $10 per square foot, 15% vacancy, our expense and shortfall allowances, and cap rate at 7.5%. Gives us our final market value of $1,215,000. Now, the property traded in April of 2022 for $1.2 million, certainly in line with that. The addenda materials include the property sale questionnaire as already presented, the income and expense as already presented by the city, as well as the purchase and sale agreement for the property. You can see the agency involved, the initial date, and ultimately the closing was in April of 2022. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Poole.
Yes, I do. Let's start with just the physical nature of the building, because I think the chair touched on it. I had some concerns as well. If you look at my work up on page 30 or your pictures that you've shown, there is one 300 square foot space that came into question. That would most likely be the entrance to the building. The entrance to the building, although it doesn't show it in your pictures, you've been in the building.
It does actually show it.
No, that's like what I'm saying is, it doesn't open to a big space. Is there glazing all the way around, the doors all the way around? Is that the 300 space that would be realistically carved out of the main floor?
I don't really know what 300 square foot space we're referring to here.
When you walk into the building,
Yes.
you walk through a door. Is there another set of doors to get into the space that would be occupied, or
There
does it
is,
open
yes.
up? So that most likely from your pictures would indicate that to be about 300 square feet on the main floor, and then the rest be for the.
Are we talking about the discrepancy in the leasable areas?
No, I'm talking about on my page 30. We see that we have approximately 6,500 square foot space and approximately 6,800 square foot space in the 300 square foot space. Those areas add up for the 300, and then it's approximately 6,500 to 6,800. So it looks like that little 300 square foot is carved out of the main floor, because that would be your entry.
It's a possibility. I really couldn't comment on
And then
what
the upper would be
your
just the-
areas are, right? I don't.
I'm just trying
participate
to
in that, so I
get a
don't
feel
know.
for that. So realistically looking at it, you could have the main floor leased out to one tenant, and you could have the upper floor leased out to one tenant, because those would be separate CRUs simply with the turn of a key.
That would be, in my professional opinion, that would be extremely unlikely in the location that this property is in. If if they were able to do that, they would have drawn interest. They obviously are aware of the property that they have, but they did have some marginal marketing of it done. Zero interest on the market in leasing the space once it's viewed by either small or large tenants.
So that, okay, let's stick to the physical nature first. What I'm saying is if they're owner occupiers on the second floor, that's where they are.
They occupy a portion of the space on the second
They
floor.
could have the law firm up there, and on the main floor, they can have a medical clinic in full.
They're never going to occupy the whole second floor space.
In
It's just
theory,
not
in
happening.
theory, I'm just saying, whether they use it all or don't.
Theory
There.
or not, it's not going to happen, so it'd be multi-tenant on the second floor as well. And I don't see a single occupant taking up the whole main floor.
I'm just looking for whether likely or not, I'm just looking at how it's physically sit down.
The other issue with that is they wouldn't have the parking available for multi-tenancy for the property.
Moving on to the sale I did look at, I agree that it does appear to be arm's length in full. The one anomaly that comes with the sale is obviously the $1,750,000 mortgage. It's almost 50% greater than the consideration paid. Can you explain why that is?
What I can tell you with regard to the sale and the lender and the mortgage, et cetera, is that the lender, Access Credit Union, did their own internal valuation of the property, and it was at $1.2 million. And they were only willing to lend on this property based on the financial cash strength of the purchaser being able to essentially cover any mortgage that they took out on it. So the figure that you're pointing to there, I am not sure whether that takes into account additional properties, which you do see in some cases, but I'm afraid I don't have that information.
Okay, second, follow up to that. You indicated that you know of or aware of the appraisal for the financing. Have you seen it? Did you question the bank appraiser?
No, I requested to view it, but I did not receive it in time. It was done a little ways back. And I can't actually present somebody else's
That's fair. That's fair.
appraisal evidence either.
Would you agree that the usual commercial commercial mortgage requires about a 30% down payment?
It varies.
But generally,
It certainly varies, yes.
so 30% on 1.75 million is approximately 2.3. Would you agree with that?
I am not, I see your point, certainly, Mr. Poole, but no, I'm not going to lend credence to that in that the purchase is 1.2 million and we're unaware of what the additional amount represents. As well as the details regarding percentage of down payment. As I indicated, the purchaser had the financial strength to get the lender to lend in an area that is typically black-lined as far as mortgage lending. It's very challenging to get lending in this area, certainly for non-typical facilities such as this. It's not a strip mall, it's not an apartment building, etc. So it is challenging. No, I can't really speak to their percentages, etc.
Okay, getting to the active leasing, because quite frankly, the use of the word limited activity for leasing would be generous. What was actively marketed? Was the whole building marketed? Was it just a portion of the second floor marketed?
So the marketing, as I've already described, when the property was purchased, it was a single occupant building. The purchaser was aware of that when they bought it. They knew that they would not immediately be able to lease it out and get occupancy permits from the city in its current layout and phase, given the issues that I've already described. So they literally can't go out and market it to the marketplace in its current layout, its current configuration, the issues with regard to code that we've already discussed. So the fact that the marketing has not been significant and widespread is because they haven't made those changes to the building yet, because it's a very significant outlay of money to put in a market that may or may not actually have tenants to occupy that space. It's a very challenged market in terms of finding office tenants. So should they be spending $1 million or more dollars on a property that they may or may not get tenants for?
So
Probably
from what
not.
I'm hearing is generally they're showing the property, having viewing of the property for 20 some odd tenants. That there would be a hypothetical tenant fit up. You would need to
No.
have a architect contractor.
The 20+ viewings that I indicated was for potential purchasers of the building when it was for sale.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was leasing activity after.
No, that was 20+ potential purchasers that viewed it and elected not to even make an offer on the property.
So the listing that we saw on Facebook, was that prior to purchase or after purchase?
Well, you're speaking to your evidence, so could you direct me to that page?
That
It
page,
says
20.
March 15th,
Yeah.
2023, so that would be after purchase. Now, respectfully, looking at the you obviously there you get different agents and firms, etc., involved in leasing, but this is a residential real estate firm that is doing a very marginal look for tenants on the property. They may have had a relation with the owner, I'm not sure, but it wasn't taken to a major commercial brokerage and put out for sale because none of them would obviously take it for a space that they would not be able to lease in its configuration.
Have you had a chance to review the sales questionnaire that you have on your 10-to-81?
I did look at it.
Okay, we can just go through it. We can confirm that the sale was in November 16, 2024. Leonardo Links tenants, yes. It was for 1.2 million, yes. Point number 5.
It transacted on April 13th, 2022.
Sorry, my mistake, I read that wrong. November 16, 2021 was the agreed upon date of.
That's when the offer was
So
submitted, yes.
generally it was off the market at that point, it was. Okay, so moving on to point 5. There was no market appraisal or opinion of value for this property
Well,
done.
it didn't indicate yes or no. I believe they did have an appraisal done. Obviously, you have to have an appraisal done in order to get mortgage financing.
But
as well
not
as I indicated, the bank had an internal value of 1.2 million on
Well, what
it.
I'm saying is there's no active marketing or exposure from what it indicated. You typically go through a commercial appraiser or a commercial real estate agent. They would have a value put on. None of that was done.
No, it was done. As I indicated, it was marketed for sale by Avison Young for 2.2 million. And the only offer that they received was from the purchaser at 1.2 million.
Point number 6. It's a little unclear here, but it does indicate that there was a vendor purchaser lease back.
Yeah, for 400 square feet, maybe.
So getting into that, the signage has been up for some almost 3 years after the fact of purchase. What is the actual lease back in place? What have you reviewed the lease back in place?
There's no.
Is there any
formal-
restrictions?
To my knowledge, there's no formal lease back in place other than the one partner of the medical clinic has stayed on in a very small unit at the rear of the property on a month-to-month basis.
And that's kind of my pause, and I hope the board is pausing as well on this. We have what indicates a lease back of sorts, maybe large, maybe not. We have limited leasing of the
It's not
property,
maybe large, maybe not. I've described it. That's what it is.
but we still see signage for numerous entities under Fairview where there's only one practitioner working.
That's correct.
Why would the signage be up for some 3 years after sale?
I mean, there's a cost involved with removing signage, et cetera. They do have their signage for the purchaser's firm present on the property there. If you remove the other signage, you have to put something in place in order to protect the lights and electricity, et cetera. It just hasn't been done as there's a cost involved.
And then just to the last point, point number 15 of the sale questionnaire does indicate that the property owner reported as good.
The condition?
Yeah, is that not?
Oh, it's, yeah, so don't get me wrong, it's been maintained. The issues are, as I've described it, you have baseboard electric heat, which has very high costs and is not useful for multi-tenancy. And it is the vintage that it is, obviously, as well as all the other issues I've described.
All right, that's a long question. I will have something though.
Okay, Ms. Werhan, any questions?
Well, it's just a lot, most of mine have been answered, thank you, but that's, the column, that signage. I'm just wondering if it would be a deterrent, would it not? If someone was passing that building, they would assume that that building was fully occupied.
They may, but respectfully, the point is that the purchaser can't actually lease the space in its current state, given the code issues with regard to access, the bathrooms, splitting up the heating system from the legacy baseboard heat into your standard HVAC, where you get individual heating for units, et cetera. Division of the utilities. It's not possible for them to lease it in its current state. So whether it's got signage up from prior tenancies or not, doesn't impact whether it's going to be leased. If they were able to actively market it for lease, they would be doing so with a major commercial brokerage in order to maximize their return on the property.
So it's really not the fact that it's going to cost them some money to remove whoever is not there.
Well, as
It's
with
more-
most things, sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
No, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead. No.
But what I was going to say is, as with most things in real estate, they're not going to invest into and change that until they're at the point where that makes sense, right? You don't build out a space on spec for a tenant with demising, et cetera, and hope that it will fit them. You wait until you have the tenant and then build it out to fit that tenant. Similarly, they're not going to take signage down and put other signage up until they have a reason to do so.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell.
No, everything's been answered, thanks.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Smith. You say you're using 5% as expenses, but your calculation uses 7%.
It does in fact use 7%. Now, realistically, the property hasn't changed since purchase. I should be asking for 1.2 million. Pardon me, I'm at 1,215,000 based on the summary on page number 20. So yes, there's a minor discrepancy between 5 and 7%, but really we're looking at 1.2, 1,215,000 as the area.
All right, thank you for that. Now, you indicated you had some rebuttal.
I do have.
May I have a follow-up
yes.
question, if that's okay?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I apologize. I just want to clarify for myself before. There's a lease back in place in some fashion. The signage was of the former owner that is still up. Is there any restrictive mechanism in place that as long as that tenancy is in that building on any form or capacity, that their signage is in place?
it's an informal, informal tenancy, as I indicated. I don't believe there's a formal month-to-month lease in place, and the characterization of it as a leaseback is somewhat inaccurate in that you had a fully occupied building, and now we have a single member of the former ownership team staying on in a very limited capacity. So no, I have no information with regard to whether their signage needs to stay up for them. I don't think there is as I said, a formal tenancy in place. And obviously, he would only be one of those people. So I think this focus on signage is, certainly on the lower end of the scale of importance.
That's all the questions, I think.
Okay, now, Mr. Smith, you indicated you had some rebuttal.
I do, yes.
Ms. Graywood, do we have it in our SharePoint?
Yeah, it should be in our SharePoint folder.
Okay, yesterday at 4.
Should be under item 4, the
Yeah. Okay, I have it. Do you have it, Mr. Arnell and Ms. Werhan?
Yeah, we're
We
good.
do. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so proceed on your rebuttal then, Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this is 2 points here, mainly with regard to the city's lease comparables in reference to the subject property. So there's a single one on Main Street, that being 2536 Main Street. If you flip to the first page of my rebuttal, you can see that is the Access Professional Center. This was Sanova Credit Union Professional Center. Access obviously took over Sanova and took over all of their properties. There is an Access Credit Union, very significant branch just adjacent to this. They're connected. There is gas station out front. It's built in 2010. It is multi-tenancy, significantly better than the subject. Shoppers Drug Mart anchored. There is a Sylvie's shopping center with Manitoba Liquor Commission, etc. across the corner. It's a much higher end area, obviously higher rents. Page 3. You have 755 Henderson. This is partially owner occupied, built for development company in the city for their particular use with additional space. They had a very long lease up process and indeed still have space for rent there. Built in 2016, beautiful interior, 3 floors, elevated on Henderson Highway. None of these are on Main Street, aside from the first one, which is very different. Page 4, single occupant building built in 2019 for the Fort Group. It is owner occupied, again, beautiful building built on Henderson Highway, very different market than the subjects. Moving on, page 5, I guess it is. Multi-tenant property built in 77, medical office, elevator 3 stories, superior to the subject. Again, on Henderson. And next one, page 6, I guess, 235 Bonner. This is essentially part of development right that fronts on Henderson, built in 2008, Manitoba Liquor Commission, and a couple of other strip mall tenancies, Coffee Place, Delta 9, Cooperators Insurance. And then we have a long-standing one on Henderson Highway, 1215 Henderson, built in 1980, multi-tenant property, quasi-retail, really on the main floor with pizza, dental, medical equipment, elevator to the 2nd floor. Again, dramatically different area than the subject property. So that speaks to the comparability of the comps to the subjects. The second part, as we spoke to earlier here with regard to the most comparable property.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to object. This is introducing new evidence via rebuttal. I was all right with the verbal, but introducing an actual brief for a different property in rebuttal, is it appropriate? I'd like to make a ruling on that point.
Okay, Mr. Smith, with regard to that, it wasn't, it certainly wasn't in the city's evidence.
No, so we spoke, we questioned the city with regard to this particular property, as it is the most acknowledged by the city as the most comparable property to the subject property, and why it wasn't included when they had this information. It's obviously it's been appealed in this cycle, as you can see, and they're aware of the $8.50 and $10 rates in that particular
Okay,
property. So
please don't mention rental rates. We're deciding whether this property is admissible or not as rebuttal evidence. So rebuttal evidence means that it has to be in the city's brief to start with.
fair enough. So I take your point. I did present my verbal evidence that it is built 1 or 2 years different, same size, same type of use, same location. And as I'd indicated in my verbal presentation, achieves lower rental rates in the neighborhood of what and or south of what I was using.
Okay, we've gone beyond whether it's admissible again, and we're talking to the property. Okay, the board will deliberate for a minute, and we'll make a decision on whether to admit that evidence or not. Okay, welcome back. The board has deliberated, and we're not going to allow the evidence on 17 what is it, 1750 Main Street into evidence. It's not properly rebuttal evidence. So is there anything else in your rebuttal evidence, Mr. Smith?
So that is it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Poole, do you have any rebuttal evidence?
No, I just have commentary on the rebuttal, if that's all right.
You have questions on the rebuttal, yes,
No,
sorry.
just generally speaking, like I indicated, the comparables for the marketplace is what it is in that marketplace. I said they are superior to the subject. I was very clear on that. I said the differential between the rates from the model, from what the market was reasonable. I'd just like to point out one, not that it's bit of an error, unless they put on page, not numbered, but 1215 Henderson, unless they put an elevator in there. There's no elevator in there. There's 2 walk-up stairs on either end. I've been in the building, so.
I know and
There's
there
pizza-
is actually.
there's a pizzeria, there's I think
So there's stairs on either end. I take your point, but there is an elevator when you go through the front. I visited it yesterday.
in the wrong building.
I don't think so.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. I thought it was just on either end. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, any questions on the rebuttal?
No, thanks. No questions.
Ms. Warhun?
I do not have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Poole, do you wish any submission?
Yes, I do. Just want to go over the facts. It did sell for 1.2 million. There was a mortgage in place for nearly 50% greater, 550,000 on top of that. That is not typical in a transaction. Typically, you have a mortgage and the mortgage is reflective of a 30% commercial down payment. Might vary a bit, but that's typically what it is. If you do the math backwards, that's about a $2.3 million mortgage, so to speak, after you pay your down payment. So we didn't get clarification as to why there's $550,000 on top of the actual purchase price from the agent. When we look at the actual sales questionnaire, they indicated that there is a lease back in place from the former ownership, which was a medical office clinic for the main, a portion of the main floor. There was no review brought forth to the board for the actual lease back in place, how long it is, what it covers, does it cover the portion that he's in, the entire floor? Why is there still signage up for doctors that don't participate in his practice that work under his umbrella? That seems highly irregular. Quite frankly, if you have practitioners that were working there, you're gonna have your general public walk into the building thinking that they're still there and they're not. If you are operating that, maybe your business has moved, your practitioner has moved, that you worked under that umbrella, or you're retired or whatever, you wouldn't want that up there anymore for 3 some odd years afterwards. But if there is a restrictive covenant somehow with that lease back, that might explain why that signage is still in place. We didn't get those answers here today. I'm still a bit puzzled on that. When we look to the actual sale, we know that it was purchased as such, intended to be portion owner occupied. We know that actual sale did not purchase an income stream, as you typically would put weight to it. You would put weight to it as you would develop a cap rate from, because the building would be generating income and you'd be looking at that for as far as purchase. That didn't happen. It was owner occupied. It was a going concern occupying it, and it was bought by another property owner that was going to owner occupy it, and then potentially owner occupied segment of it, and then lease out the remainder, from what it sounds like, with a future plan. That's not a sale that we would consider way too. In my eyes, we need to look at it from an investor standpoint as far as generating income, you're buying an income stream, and then you can have a cap rate. They simply bought an empty building. They bought an empty building. It needed some tenant improvements, as you typically would have. In this case here with deferred maintenance, I'm sure there is, given it's an owner occupier for a number of years. Moving to another owner occupier, if you're going to convert it over to multi-tenant building, tenant fit ups and capital investments, we would most likely need as well. I'm not denying that. But that's a hypothetical. What if? We're here to value the property as it sits. And as it sits, it is a building that appears that it could be owner occupied in full, 1 CRU, or potentially 2, with simply a turn of a key, being in the law firm up top, on the 2nd floor, and then another medical clinic, or however it was prior to this, occupying the main floor. And we still see that the main floor tenant partially is the former owner or of the property. So to me, there's a number of clauses here. I think our market valuation is appropriate. We've looked into the marketplace. We see that the marketplace for both office and medical related is what it is. We also see that it is significantly greater than the market rent that the market rents that are in place are greater than the subject property, but that's reflective of the age, vintage, and the type of property that it was. It's a $12 to $13 range, not a $18 to $20 range. So I felt that investigation with the marketplace was appropriate, and the model accounts for that properly. As far as putting on our difference vacancy, asking for 15% vacancy, I think is not appropriate. We see that it was owner occupied prior, it was fully owner occupied, and we see once it was purchased, there's intention to do that as well. If you're buying from an owner occupier that's going to vacate, there's going to be some initial vacancy. To look at it like it's going to be 15% in a long-term horizon into the future and continue so, you just have to simply look in the past. Has the building ever been 15% vacant? And it doesn't look like it ever has. So with the parameters that we put on, I think we put a good feasible look onto it as if it was unencumbered by lease and the market absorbed it. I think the appropriate value should be $2,317,000. With that, I'll leave it in your decision. Thank you.
Okay, summation, Mr. Smith.
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. So this is actually a very straightforward case that's being unnecessarily clouded, in my opinion. We have a property that is a suburban office building, single occupant, located on North Main Street. Very limited demand in terms of both potential tenancy in the area as well as investment in the area. You don't see a lot of acquisitions and or sales in this area of properties, and indeed there are exceptionally few office buildings in the area for obvious reasons. So again, speak to the straightforward nature of the this case itself, the property was marketed for sale, exposed to the market, marketed at 2.2 million by a major commercial brokerage in the city. They had, as I indicated, over 20 tours of the property. And once the potential purchasers viewed the property and saw all of the issues that they would face with regard to investment in the property, in order to bring it up to a state in which they could actually market it for lease for any potential office market out there on North Main, were simply overwhelming, and they saw that for them, there was really no return, so they did not proceed to make offers. There was a single offer that was from our client at 1.2 million, based on the property as it was, and for their own particular use, not to use the whole property. They're not that big a law firm. They're quite aware that they really only occupy about half of the second floor going into the purchase. So they viewed it as a long-term process, and they were aware going in essentially that this is not a property that they could then take to the market and put tenants in and start deriving income from. It is not possible for them to market it for sale and get occupancy permits from the city for the spaces in the building as it stands now. This has been confirmed by multiple commercial brokerages that they have consulted it with both prior to purchase and subsequently. So they are in the situation, as I described, that they have things that they have to do to the building in order to tenant the property. So what they have is the space for their use, essentially. The issue of signage is honestly simply a red herring. This is not, this is a medical clinic that sold their building. Many of the practitioners retired and probably are not particularly concerned about their signage being there, but more than that, it's a cost issue. They are not going to make changes to the property until they're confident that in the short term they can get return on that investment in the property. So they're not going to build it out until they know that it makes financial sense in which to do so. And to assume that any astute purchaser, investor, owner would do so is simply inaccurate. Now, to speak to the vacancy issue, owner occupied, fully occupied building as the former use was. That's a very different matter than what the property is going forward. And we're not looking into the distant future that it's always going to be 25% vacant or something. We have a 2-year cycle. Is it going to be 15% vacant over the next 2 years? No, it's going to be probably 70% vacant as they occupy 25, or rather half of the second floor, and you have a holdover, not lease back, informal occupancy by one of the former partners in maybe 300-400 square feet at the rear of the property. So the issues with regard to that are truly not issues. It's not something we even considered that we would have to speak to. It's not a sale leaseback when you have a nominal month-to-month tenancy for a single partner in a tiny amount of space. That is not a sale leaseback. So what we have here is the city reaching for a value of $2.3 million on a property in a very limited marketplace that clearly has indicated that 1.2 million is the only value that could be achieved for it. The addition, just a final point. As I referred to, the city has acknowledged that the most comparable property to the subject, being really the only other significant office building in that particular area on Main Street, 1750 Main, which they are well aware of. They did not present the material, and I have verbally confirmed that the rents there are supportive of the $10 rate. In fact, they are $8.50, $9, and $10 in that facility. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The board will take a 10-minute break till 10:40, and then we'll come back with Mr. Neufeld's properties.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I guess we need to swear Mr. Neufeld in.
Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld?
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, so our next property is 180 King Street. So, Mr. Pohl, you can begin on that.
File number is 243939. Rule number is 13096039100180 180 King Street, Dynasty Building. 2025 value, we have two classifications, 140, 160, and obviously exempt and taxable. The exempt portion is 1,379,000, and the taxable portion is 1,192,000 for a total of 2,571,000. Built in 1987. We have a total leasable area of 42,839 square feet. We look on page 3 is the income and expense information they provided us. Just fully aware of the board, I was only able to bring in the 2021, not the 2022 year. Our filing system, I wasn't able to locate the 2022 year. It's just a glitch when I was doing this brief. So you do have the 2022 in the appellant's brief, so you'll have 2 years to review. But just so we're clear, that is the 2021, not the 2022 year. And when we look at the 2021 year, generally speaking, it is what it is. If you turn to page 5, the only things that I would be looking to take out is obviously the mortgage interest to put back into the NOI. So the NOI adjusted with that back end is $221,756. All things reported to us. If you look over on page 7 is the rent rolls, and that runs to page 10. Page 10 indicates that they have approximately 9% vacancy in the building. So from that, we can step over to page 11. Page 11 just shows the location of the property. It's obviously Dynasty Building, St. John James the King. Our comparables are on page 12. Generally, citywide, or downtown, I should say, wide, we have approximately 46 comparables with 292,940 square feet total leased out. Our average CRU size is approximately 6,300 square feet with a median CRU size of 4,500 square feet. The average rent is $11.81. The weighted average is $12.07, and the median is 12. So we do have a good range, very tight range. On page 14 and on page 15 are the breakdowns between the two income streams we have on it. On page 14 is the 60T, and on page 15 is the 40. So what we have on here is a lower parameter put on it to account for the building itself. There is a lower standard in this building. It performs a little less than the average. So we have that accounted for. For $20,211 square feet, we have $8.04 attached or applied, I should say, which produces a PGI of $162,572, 13% for vacancy. That's model driven. Gives us an effective gross income of $141,398, 3% for expenses, $10 for shortfall, gives us a net operating income of $110,882. We have it capped at 9% or 9.3%, I should say. Again, we've already made adjustments in the past to this property to downgrade the property to the site specificness of it. So the average value or the estimated value around it is $1,192,000 for the 60T. Same exercise applied for the 40E. And again, for 21,398 square feet, we have $8.02, which produces a PGI of $171,699. Same standard parameters apply again, which is 13% vacancy, which gives effective gross income of $149,378. Expenses at 3%, shortfall at 10, gives us a net operating income of $117,080, capped at 9.3%, gives us back to $1,259,000. And on page 16, there is another small CRU about individually at 1,230 square feet. We have that at $12.26, which gives us a PGI of $15,080. Same standard parameters apply again. 13% for vacancy gives us effective gross income $13,120. Expenses at 3% and shortfall at 10 gives us a net operating income of $11,127. Capped at the same 9.3 cap rate, which gives us a value of $120,000. So on page 3, or sorry, page 7, we're showing the 3 income streams totaled. I just want to point out what we did going on my page 5 and 6. We see that the adjusted NOI for 2021, when the mortgage is put back in, is $221,756. We'll see as we question and go along from the agent's 2022 year, with an adjustment made there for leasing commissions put back in and mortgage interest put back in. We have $268,635 for that year for NOI. So when we put it back towards the model NOI of $239,089, very reasonable. So with that, I think the values that we have here today are appropriately assessed, and no questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. Just to clarify a couple of comments here. Firstly, you stated that NOI was 221,000. And what year was that?
221,000. That was for the 2000. My information, 2021 year.
Okay, for 2021, you had 221,000.
That is simply, if you look at.
That's fine. I just want to know what year. The other statement you made was a rent of $12. Is that a gross rent you're stating?
No, that was the model driven rent on page 16. We have one CAU broken out for $12.26, and that is a 1,230 square foot space.
Oh, that's what the $12 was referring to. Okay, and then the model on the rest is $8.
1,200 or so square feet.
On the rest of it, then the model is showing $8 as an average then.
Yeah, a few cents over $8.
And the storage space is listed on the page 14, and I guess no, sorry, it's just the 14.
14, yeah, C6 spaces. It's the last 2 to 3 pits.
Okay, and the exempt space, this is a full exempt space. Is this all? Sorry, I'm just looking at getting to that. 21,000 feet. Is this the city of Winnipeg space?
City of Winnipeg Human Resource, Center, Occupational Health Center.
Okay.
And yes, has a small space of 190 or 195 square feet, and the e-learning center. So yeah, that's all been accounted for.
As fully exempt, okay.
Yeah.
And so the valuation on pages 14, 15, 16, and the summary on 17, were these all prepared by the model?
Yes, they're all model generated. To be clear, I didn't change anything. If I do change anything from the model and appeal, I will let the panel know as I.
Right. Now, I just a question on that is, recently, we had discussions with your department on the model and multiple revenue streams. Are you aware that the model does changes values upwards when you split the revenue streams like this?
I can't comment on that, Mr. Newfeld.
Okay, so the question answer is you are not aware of it.
I don't know if discussions led up to that determination. Not under the scope of this.
Well, I can quote you. It was a supplemental issued for 330 St. Mary that when it went through the model again with a split revenue stream for an exemption, changed the value upwards by a significant amount. And the reasoning we were given is because it's different sizes, economy of scale, and it changes the value for the whole building. And it is an error. So were you aware of that?
Not until you brought it up now, and I didn't research it. It's outside the scope of this area.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, questions, Ms. Borhan?
I do not have none, thank you.
Mr. Arnell?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, I got a question more just out of curiosity. I don't think anything hinges. Why did he split in income streams for the exempt portion?
I don't know. Honestly, it didn't really ring a bell for me. Other than I would think that this has been long-term in place for the 40E. And then they perhaps looked at another one that was granted at a later date and just did it for a separate kid and possibly didn't realize they could have just put it under it. It doesn't impact it really at all.
No, I just wondering why it wasn't a separate CRU under the income stream
Yeah,
too.
I mean,
but,
in theory, I could go back and absorb it in and just delete the other income stream.
yeah, well, again, nothing hinges on it. All right, Mr. Neufeld, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you. So the property is actually a very strange property. If you see the picture on page 2, there are it's a condominium title. It's actually correctly called a strata title, and it's been split into 4 sections. And we're only dealing with one section on the CR of the strata title, but just this is important for understanding the building. So section 1 are air rights, which just you can see the air. That's there is a title for future upward development. Section 2 is the parkade underground. That's not in this assessment. Section 3 is the Chinese Cultural Center, which is the 2nd floor, but there's also a gymnasium in it, so that extends into 3rd floor space. That is not on our discussion today. So the last section is the rest of the property, which is the first part of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. The 6th floor, you can see from the picture, is limited in height and quality. It's covered up and it's into storage space as for rental because it's not office quality, and that is the difference when you look at the rent rolls and the values. Now the only issue we're going to be putting forward to you today is the income. As far as the capitalization rate is concerned, when we prepared this, we had no idea what the city would use. They have used a higher rate, and this is in recognition of the strata title difficulties and the weird space, the difficulty marketing it. This you don't put on the market and simply say building for sale. You say, I have a part of a building for sale. It had sold in the last few years at a rate that was nowhere near what they had hoped to achieve. And I don't know if the assessor reported it. No, but it was I believe it was $1.8 million was that transaction. And I'm not sure if they registered this on title. Well, yes, it was registered on title. It goes, but it was a strata sale. The way we look at this is, so we looked at the actual income, and we had it worked out in the 22 year to 251,000, and then after adjustments for vacancy, etc., the NOI was 182,532. Now, if you look at our workup in page 1, we used an 11.4% vacancy rate. The city used a 13%. We used a non-recoverable rate of that works out to about 5%. The city used 5% plus 2%. The city used 3%. So while I was listening to the conversation, I went to the base workup on this, and I changed the 11.4 to 13%, and then I changed the 5 and 2 to 3% overall, and the NOI is 184,000 that we have. So, you know, I'm not going to change this number because it's so close to what we had calculated. Whether you object to the non-recoverables or not, on the basis of the way we prepared our valuation, with the same methodology, there would be, on our workup, virtually no change in that. And we're using actual income. And with a unique building like this, I don't think you have another choice. I don't think you can go to the market and say, we've got comps to show you, we can put it in a model and we can make it work out, because it just doesn't work like that on a unique building. The best source is that I think that the 9.3 recognizes the issues that were brought up, and so I'd be prepared to change our cap rate to the 9.3. So that comes to 182,532 divided by 0.093 is 1,962,709 rounded to 1963. As for the split on this, we did not provide you with that split. So I would have to, I would do it by floor area, I suppose. So I can give you those calculations if in a minute or two. So 2211 versus 21,398 and 1230. And the reason I was doing it this way is that some of that city space is also on the upper floor in storage, so it's a fairly it's an equitable method of doing it. Do you like percentage points or rounding of decimals? Well, I'll do it. I'll do the 1 decimal point, 52.8% exempt, and 47.2% taxable on 1963 is is 926,500 40 T or 60 T, I think it is. And
What figure did you say there?
one sec, just in the middle of another calculation.
Okay.
I'll repeat them to you shortly. Okay, I've rounded them all. So then I have as a total split value to be 1,036,500 E 40 E, 926,500 60 T, and that's on a total value of 1963. I think that's a pretty similar ratio to what the current assessment is. And that's it for me.
Okay, questions, Mr. Poole?
Yes, page number 1, can you confirm that the roll number that you have on file is wrong? It's not the roll number under appeal.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. It's 180 King, and we're dealing with the property under appeal, so this could be a typo.
You mentioned that there was a sale for 1.8 million that you're way to, or like
Yeah,
on a sale.
there was a sale. I'd have to check back what year it was.
Why is it not included in your, well, I'm not saying we should include it in your evidence. Why wasn't it included in your evidence if you know of it?
Well, because assessments are generally always done on the income approach for commercial properties, and I knew it to be a sale that of a very unique property under a very unique set of circumstances. It's interesting, but not evidence.
So then we shouldn't be putting any weight to it then.
I mean, I don't put my blinders on here. I know it's out there, and people should know about it. And we're producing a value based on the income approach.
So your value that you originally saw was about 1.8 million, correct?
Sorry, I didn't hear that properly.
The original value that you saw was approximately the sale price. Your workup worked out to be approximately the sale price. Suspected sale or parent sale price.
Well, sure, coincidentally.
Coincidentally. So working your numbers backwards, is that how you came to the $5.87, right? Or is
No.
that based on the performance of the building?
Purely, as I said, it was purely and simply based on the income workup.
Okay, so the $5.87, that is not what the building's performing at. You're not using the leasehold information.
Well, that's the average. That's the average net rent calculation.
Okay, so then how is your operating incomes so much different from what was reported? Because they would be using that too.
The statement, we manage the property, and a reading of the statement is a long exercise, because the style and mix of rents, there's a fair amount of rents that are gross, and there are a handful only that are net, and there's exclusions on them on recoveries, and actually the other problem with this building is this particular tenant, or sorry, this particular portion of the building pays the costs and has the space for the mechanical equipment. So that elevator that goes up and down is paid for by this section. So the entire debate on non-recoverables is not appropriate here because they're subsidizing the other floors. They have to pay for it, and they lose rentable space for it. So the reading of the statements should never be simplified in this.
You turn to page 5. Can you confirm 4 lines up from the bottom, their net income is 197,000 approximately?
197, yes.
Can you confirm that if you add in the $54,380 for your mortgage and leasing commissions, which I'm not going to get into in length today, we as a department don't agree with, the 17,000 leasing commissions put back in gives you $268,635 for the net operating income at the reference date reported to us.
Yeah, that's on those lines, yes.
Can you please convey to the board myself what the WC5 entitlement of $32,237 is for as a cost?
Yeah, I'd have to look it up here. I've got the open file here on what
Generally
WC is.
speaking, before we know if we should include it or not, we should know what it is. And if we keep it out as I have for the 268,000 from net operating income reported to us, depending on what it is, it'd be put back in, which produces a net income, operating income of over 3.
Yeah, you're just making unsupported allegations here.
No,
I'm looking into it now, and really hold your commentary back of what it is or it isn't. I believe it's an expense that's related to the operation of the building, and I'm just looking it up here. My understanding is that these are costs that are attributable to the operation of the building in its entirety that the subject is paying for.
The only questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Werhan?
None, thank you.
Okay, summation, Mr. Pohl?
The building is generally outperforming our parameters, even though they put a lower set of parameters on it. You can tell by the NOIs. I reported them as such, so if you look at it from a contracted analysis base, you can see what it is. Our model NOI is less. I'll leave it up to the board to determine whether they figure it is appropriate to be being used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. The building is rather unique, and the difficulty of trying to value this by looking at the market or anyone's model is inappropriate. It's singular. You can see the assessment model has made some changes to the cap rate to account for it. The ones that have not been adjusted for are the determination of the net income on the property. Now, you heard the assessor testify that his calculation of the 2021 income net was 200, NOI was 221. Our calculation of the 2022 income was 251. And that was with all appropriate expenses allocated by the individual operation points that I brought forward. And the methodology of doing it, I reworked it just to make sure that we were approaching it in the same way with the vacancy and shortfall and the non-recoverables. And actually, I realized I didn't make another change. We would have greater shortfall with the model. So I think the 182,000 we have is calculated almost the same way as the assessment department, the same number of inputs. It's a good number for use on this building, and the value is now the sale. I just looked it up, was in 2016 at 1.8 million, and nothing's changed since 2016. It didn't grow a new floor or shed itself of the other restrictions that are placed upon it by this by the title. And lastly, to point out is the method. This is something that we didn't put in evidence because we only became aware of it after this evidence was filed. Is when the city does this split revenue stream on.
Okay, are you introducing new evidence in
No,
summation?
I'm introduced. I said it to you earlier in questioning.
Okay,
When the city, but it's borne out by the city's evidence. When there's a split revenue stream, as they do, you've seen sometimes, it changes the model, and each is treated as a separate building, which on economy of scale changes the rental rates, even though the unit sizes remain the same. And we found this happening on one building, and the city, give them credit. They recognized it, and they reacted and made the appropriate change. And in this one, if you look at the assessor's page 17, well, actually, the telling story is going to be on page 16. So when you split this, you got a space at $12 in the model, whereas the rest of the space is $8. That's one of the indications that the model is not accurate for a building like this, especially in the split revenue stream. Thank you. That's it.
okay, thank you. We will move on to 2536 Main Street, which is oddly familiar. So, Mr. Pohl on 2536 Main Street.
24, the file number is 244099. The roll number is 05009424106160. The civic address is 2536 Main Street. 2025 assessed values for $2,517,000. It's fully taxable. Built in 2010. We have a leasable area of approximately 8,982 square feet. If you look on page 3, it is partially owner occupied. It is on a net rent basis. And generally speaking, moving down to the net operating income, we see that they report 976,000 approximately. There's 12% vacancy within the building as it sits. And of course, that NOI is appears to be impacted by an owner occupier. Clearly, the owner occupier is not paying rent on their own space. So if you go over to page 4, I'm looking for the owner occupier on the rent roll. And the only thing that I see as owner occupied is the additional boardroom, or sorry, access boardroom. If I can read that right. Yeah, access boardroom. Approximately 1,180 square feet. There's no attributable rent to it, as well as the vacant and unfinished area. 1,050 square feet. So not sure, other than that, maybe there was more area in there that's owner occupied. I can only go from what the guidance indicated to us. So moving forward, we see on page 5 our rent comparables right from 1 to 20. And highlighted are the rents in the subject property. Particularly on rent 20 or comparable number 20, unit 7, they were getting $17 square foot for 1,200 square foot space. That lease ended. That's why you see it again, and restarted with a new tenant at $17.50, approaching the reference date 2023. So overall, it's a mixed use building. There was a law firm at one point. There's medical professionals in it. There's immigration services in it. There is a hair salon, beauty salon in it. So it's a mixed use. But generally speaking, it falls into the marketplace that I've described from comparables 1 through 20. It's a newer, better building, superior to your deal you heard earlier today. But the rental comparables that we brought in are like in similar for the subject property. So what we have is for the total of 29,304 square feet. We have an average CRU size of 14,006. Geez, sorry, I'm really misspeaking this morning. The average CRU size is 1,465 square feet, and the median CRU size is about 1,300 square feet. So overall, we have an average rent of $18.15, weighted average of $18.30, and a median of $18.50. So we have a very nice tight analysis, and of which the subject property performs very well in the subject vicinity in Maine, and obviously Anderson to be very similar to this. So when we go over to page 6, for the 8,982 square feet, we have approximately modeled $17.50. Little under what it's performing at, but again, that's modeled. We have potential gross income of $150,915, 6% for vacancy, gives us effective gross income of $148,440. Expenses at 3% and at $8 for shortfall, gives us a net operating income of $139,676, capped at 5.55%, yields back the $2,517,000. So as I spoke to earlier, the reported NOI, I'm always verifying contract versus market or our approach is a little lower. But again, we do see a bit of a vacant space in the building, and we do see reported that they're owner occupier, but only one small CRU of a little over 1,100 square feet. So with that would obviously impact the NOI. I do have some questions on that. So other than that, I think the capitalization rate being at the lower end of the range reflects the quality build, reflects the location of the property. The location, as we've already mentioned in the other bill, but you can see it on the appellant's pictures online. Access is through Red River Boulevard. You can also get through it via the other roll numbers that are on site, Shoppers Drug Mart, Credit Union. You can sort of get by the gas station. And they do have security on this site where they do, there's turning gates where they actually block up access on Sundays. Simply from what it seems like, it's to impede the traffic that you would have from the Tim Hortons operation to the south. But generally speaking, it is a well-performing building. It's high profile, good location, newer build, desirable tenancies. The tendencies that they are getting are what I've shown. So they are at the upper end of the range. So that's why the capitalization rate will reflect that. So with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, just I'm going to page 6. Was this all done by the model?
It was, yes.
And the gross up on this building is fairly significant, isn't it?
Can you? Sorry, not quite. I didn't quite catch that.
Isn't the gross up on this building fairly significant?
What do you mean by gross up? Like the gross area versus the leaseable area?
Sorry, I thought you're familiar with the term. So the gross up is the difference between the total physical area and the rentable area, which is common area, and then the tenant pays for their leased space and then a share of that common area. So in this case, the gross up is fairly significant, isn't it?
Yeah, we're about 3,000 square feet into 12.
Right. Now, when you have rents, whether it's the model or these comparables, do you ever review the gross up?
Generally, all things being equal, you're gonna have similar, in this case here, there's only about a 25% difference, that's not that out of line.
Well, okay, sorry, let's just let's just put this into numbers. So the gross up would be 3,018 square feet. And you divide that
12,000
into
to about 25%.
you divide that into 8982. That's the industry way. So your gross up is 33.6%. Do you know what the typical gross up is in the marketplace?
Depends what class of building you're looking at. Given
Oh, it doesn't.
buildings such as this, you could have a wide range. Your A's and B's are closer in line, C's as well. But for this being a two-story configuration as it is, there could be a wider range in this one. I'm not sure what.
So you don't know what the industry average is then?
I didn't bring that in.
What you don't know what is a good number in the business?
That's not part of the scope of my review for today.
That's not, it's a question. If you don't know, it's fine. Just say you don't know. You had mentioned it's performing well. So the vacancies that they've listed here, unit 5, 1,050 square feet. How long has that been vacant?
Don't believe there's been a tenant in there. I could be wrong on that, but as far back as I looked, I don't believe there has been a tenant.
Okay, so empty since 2010. Okay. And the boardroom for access, have you looked at it? Have you been in it?
I haven't inspected this property for appeal purposes. We do have file photos. I have been in the building as far as a patron.
And where is Access Credit Union's head office? Do you know?
I believe it was second floor. But again, I didn't inspect that space.
Okay. And in terms of vacancy, where was this sourced? Is this from the sorry, and then the name of the document, income producing properties?
Or I can't hear you.
The 6% vacancy applied. What was the source of this?
Good model.
Right. So is this from? I'm just wondering if you could point out where in the model it is that you've got something called the income producing valuation of income producing properties published this year. What is the how is it classified?
This is an OFS. There is a 6% vacancy applied to it.
Okay, so it's just a basic OFS designation in your system. Okay, and in terms of capitalization rate, you've provided a table somewhere in here. Maybe just let us know. Oh, there it is, page 8. Is there a particular line that this comes from?
No, this would be, well, I mean, you would consider this either suburban B on the range of a, just simply for the performance of the rents that are in place. The newness of the building, I wouldn't call it necessarily an A, but it's getting closer to it.
And why are your rates so much lower than what the market is indicated from people who sell these buildings, which you've included in the next 3 sets of columns?
These are the guidelines that's released to the public. Our modelers they produce the model. I didn't have any input on the model rate that was made, but generally speaking, if I'm looking at this, it's at a very good location. It's at there's a credit union banking institute in front of it. There is a Tim's in close proximity. There is a Shoppers. Those bring on a lot of patrons to the site. You can get through those sites to the subject property. You have a gas station as well in front of it. Again, lots of patron travel to this node at Red River Boulevard and Main Street. Given the newness of the building, 2010 is very good quality build. It's very desirable as far as tenancies, as you can see from the cheap tenants that the contract rents that are in place. Everything's pointing to very good quality, investor grade property. You would be at the lower end of the capitalization rate spectrum.
Is this physically located on Main Street?
Not physically located. I showed you pictures and what I described. It's direct access off of Red River Boulevard. But you can go through the site to get to the other sites. And the owner does live in the area. The owner does on Sundays close down his site with swinging gate. And there is on site for the totality. There is a security guard that is usually depends on what site he's on. I go to Tim, he's moving around a bit, so I don't know. It might be a shared common security for the whole site, for the whole group of properties.
Now, okay, I'm just going to lead here a bit. So there are 3 properties all owned by Access Credit Union in this cluster. If the other 2 were to be sold, and they are the bank and the Shoppers Drug Mart, how would you get access to this site?
Said through Red River Boulevard.
Red River Boulevard. Okay. So that's not Main Street then, right?
It is literally, I'd say maybe 225 feet from Main Street.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Okay, Ms. Werhan, questions?
Just out of curiosity, the unit number 8, cognitive behavior therapy, is there any exemptions for that type of
No,
business?
no, I believe it's a private practice. We wouldn't necessarily, the onus is upon the tenant or the property owner to apply for an exemption. And then we would review it. And then if there is one warranted, we would give it. We don't go into the marketplace and look to give exemptions. That's not the onus. This is not on us.
Okay, so that would be for also unit number 1 being a medical center and unit, number 7.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any exemptions in here warranted.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Arnell?
Just one further to the units. So did I hear you correctly in saying that unit number 5 has never been rented? Never been leased?
Yeah, I don't believe so. From my recollection, it's not finished or some degree base. I've never been in the actual unit itself. I just have what we have on file, and what they're reporting to us on the rent roll and income expense questionnaire.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, and I have no questions. So, Mr. Neufeld, your presentation.
Thank you. So just to correct a few inaccuracies here, Access Credit Union's head office is in the arm of Stanley, and that's near Winkler. This was built by Sonova before the merger. Sonova's head office was, I'm going to get it wrong here. It was, I want to say Toulon. No, it was in the Interlake. They've never had a head office in this building. So when you look at the units and the description of them, yes, that one unit 5 has been vacant since they built it. The unit 6 is vacant. They put a boardroom in there, and any of the tenants who needs a boardroom can use it. It's available for rent. And when we looked over this with Access, it was a question of, you can't really call it vacant when you're using it for something, but it's not generating income, and it is available for rent. So it's an impact on income. Then to the issue of the gross up. So a gross up is the amount of common area space that you need to charge your tenants for because they get to enjoy the use of it. And it varies from building to building. If you have a building that's a standalone, the gross up is usually 0. You get what you pay for. If you have a multi-tenant building, it varies, and a healthy rate is 7 to 12%. You do not want to exceed that because you're not making any money. Now, this one is at 33%, and it's reflected in the paid rents. So you'll note that the actual, some of the paid rents appear to be much higher than other rents, and that's because they're paying to share the rest of the space. And it's something we don't often get into in valuation for tax appeals unless there's a wide variance. In this case, there is. So you have to bear in mind that the paid rents per square foot do not compare to the market due to the gross up, and are wildly different from a full floor paid rent. And now in this particular case, of course, because our NOIs are really not our NOIs, our potential rents are extremely similar, it's not a factor. So it's just for your information. When you see this again, you're going to hear another building today that's a full floor rent, and you'll see that the difference on it. Now, but our big differences are simple. It's the vacancy rate and the cap rate. Vacancy is obvious. They have had 2 units empty since the day they built it. So those 2 units combined are 2,230 square feet out of the 8982. So they've been clipping along at 24.8% since the day they built it. And not for lack of trying. Despite what the assessor says, it's not a great market area. It's small users have found some interest in this, but it's not. It's a professional services and office use in a market area that's generally has a retail orientation. The picture on page 1 shows the subject property at the back. It is off Red River. The property, the corner property is not theirs. That's a gas station, but the property that's weirdly shaped, that is Access Credit Union, and you can see it was drawn so that they can have accesses for all 3 of their parcels. The consumer's property is cut off. Not consumers, shoppers' property is cut off. It is also part of the original lot, and you can see that the way they've cut all these parcels is to allow cross access on the different entrances, and you can count them up, and they do have a total of 2 entranceways. When they were able to obtain access from the 254 Main Street, because that particular site has 3 access points, so they do share that as well for the credit union. So the thing is very convoluted. On its own, it's going to suffer. It's rearage property. It's not Main Street property. I was working for Sonova when they built it, and so I know their motivation. They said, we've got a lot of land here. We want to put a branch up. Hey, let's just put up an office as well. And it's not been profitable. So we ended up using extremely high vacancy rate of 17.7, and that was calculated by, I just want to double check here. It says, okay. Normally, what we like to do is look at a difference of actual and market. On our page 4, you can see that the Class B suburban is 17.7%. And that's what the person who wrote this up did. I don't disagree with this at all, knowing that there's a 24.8% actual vacancy. We are not going to the 25%. Simply because at that point in time, the highest and best use is quite questionable. It's still earning income, not great income. And the other point is the capitalization rate. And we did a calculation on it, looking at our Collier's cap rate study using a start point of 7.5, as indicated by our numbers, which reflect actual sales transactions. And the issues on this were the size of it, the design and layout being two-story suburban suburbs. You want one story. The second story is always a harder to rent and not worth it. And the other factors on it would be, and this is a bit of an incomplete list here. I believe location, yes, location, there's a major factor on it. And what wasn't listed on here was property rights. Person who did this wasn't aware of the ownership issue, but yeah, it's difficult to market on its own. Regardless, I think that the 8.25 is a fair number. Now going to some evidence for you on page we had some cap rate sales that I was going to discuss. Starting page 40, and now these are dominated by downtown transactions, and the reason is not because we're trying to give you the worst case scenario. The reason is that there were no real investment sales of office properties in outside of the suburban area. There's no database to draw from, because most of these properties that are outside the downtown area just don't there's 5 really of that are really considered as investment grade. None of those 5 sold. What I'm trying to say here, though, is top of page 40, 325 Broadway, sold for hotel conversion, no cap. 125 Gary, offered on the market at 11 million in 2022. That deal fell through, and that was not going to be a cap rate sale because they were going to convert it to multifamily. 155 Carlton, a share sale, Q3 2022, 9% cap. 175 Carlton, beside it is a multifamily conversion, no cap rate. 171 Donald, on the next page, is a former Crosstown Credit Union, sold at $75 a foot, no cap rate. It's a multifamily conversion. So $75 a square foot, though, is key. 230 Portage, was an investment property. The tenant departed, and this was a purchased by an end user, no cap rate. That's going to come in at about 130 a foot. 363 Broadway, 12% cap rate, in place income, and a Q4 2022 sale. The Main and Pioneer buildings offered in Q1 at 2023. There was a deal at $50 a square foot, not a cap rate because it was losing so much money. That deal fell through, and it was eventually, post-reference, sold as a donation, no sale. 225 Vaughan, multifamily conversion. So there's a very common theme here, is office losing its highest and best use in Winnipeg. And that's the state of affairs. I think the right way that we have to end up looking at these properties is likely going to have to be on a rate per square foot on it. So in this building on the market, the number would be 12,000 square feet. Our value is $110 a square foot, and that is the way we would this is the way we would evaluate it on a market basis for outside of taxation, and this is the way we have to start looking at office and the collapse of the office market in the world post March 2020. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Poole?
Yeah. Can you please turn to your page 3? Income expense questionnaire indicated that it was owner occupied, a portion of. Can you confirm that the only thing that they checked off was the access boardroom?
First of all, not they. I assisted with this, and I recommended that they call it owner occupied based on my opinion of the usage. They had it under their control, yet it's available for lease. And because nobody wants it, they've kind of like opened the doors for everybody to use it. And I said, that's the best way to describe this. You don't want to be misleading and call it vacant if you once every 3 months use it for a meeting.
So let me rephrase that then. There are no owner occupied areas within this building then.
Not in the truest definition of it, no.
Okay. We see the rents that are in place, they are strong. We see that a law firm moved out and another chiropractic moved in. Why would you consider that there's no market, considering that the actual rents in place range at around $17.50 or greater?
Well, you obviously weren't listening, so I'll repeat it. That's not strong. That is a different method of reporting rental rates. They have an incredibly high gross up. So if you're just using a rate for the unit they occupy and forgetting about how much common area usage they have, it appears deceptively large. It is not. You have to compare it on a gross up to the rest of the space. So here, give you a number. So if you use a 33% gross up and the actual market should be 12, your $20 rate drops by 20% to $16 to compare it to a market. That's a simplified method of explaining it.
So holding on to that thought, you stated that this was not been profitable.
Oh, no, I said it has not been profitable enough. It's not a good investment. You need a better return than this on your investment. And when you start finding a different use for it that'll pay more money, it'll lose its highest and best use. So if today the income is they're turning a net income, which, by the way, their declaration I think is quite fair, of $97,000. When it drops to $50,000-$60,000, it's time to bulldoze and find something that pays better.
So moving on to your page 2, I just want to clarify, it's not as profitable as you'd like for it to be. Gross area, your argument. Using your own capitalization rate, Colliers capitalization rate, which differs greatly from ours, but I'll just take it at what you've reported. You have 5 out of 5 for access, 100% on that on that item. Land use, 3 out of 3, 100% on that. You have quality and condition, both 8 out of 8, 100% for those. And for income growth, tenant strength, and income stability, 10 out of 10 right across, 100% on that. Your major points for capitalization rate, you are 100% on, but yet you're saying it's not as profitable, and you're using a 17.7% vacancy, which would be long-term, looking at the property as an investor would purchase it. Why would your capitalization rates hit 100% on your major points, yet your workup shows something different and rental shows something different again?
Well, when you're buying and selling properties in the market, you're not cherry picking and saying this one's good, this one's good, you must all be good. This is a view of it in its totality. So when we look at a property, and I'll refer you to page 34, looking at suburban rates, 6.5 to 7.5, it's higher than 7.5 because it's just not as good as a property as described in our definitions, which are on page, where are my definitions page? Page 37. You know, it's nowhere near this. So that's all part of it. And when we do our capitalization rates, not only do we do this chart for it, we consult with our brokers who sell properties and our other agents who lease properties, and discuss with them the potential for this on the marketplace. We don't do things in abstract. We tried to sell this building. How is the market going to look at it? And it's not favorable. Now, the only time you would see a cap rate that could potentially be lower in a property like this when they're artificial, and that would be when they're bought for a different purpose. So that's not the way we're looking at it here. There's no market for the investment in office, and there hasn't been since March of 2020.
All the questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Anel, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Werhan?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions, so any submission, Mr. Paul?
Yes, I do. I think our parameters we put on show a strong performing property. I think the net income that's reported to us shows a strong performing property. If you look at the color zone capitalization rate items, the ones that indicate strength of capitalization, right, as I went over, they were 100% accountable in their own capitalization rate, how they determined it. And yet you see a 17.7% vacancy put on a building that's never experienced it. So I think that's the main issue that you have here. And of course, you would never have an 8.25% capitalization rate for a building that's performing this strong. With that, I'll leave it at your decision. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. For 15 years, minimum vacancy 24.8%. And the key here is we're not chasing an artificial vacancy, it's money. And that hasn't generated money. The evidence that the assessor provided on his page 3, 97,600 NOI. And you can't make the claim, well, it's owner occupied space, you don't pay rent. It's not owner occupied in terms of it's for everybody to use because we can't rent it, we can't get a deal for it. So that doesn't look good when you try to put a property for sale. Imagine bringing a potential user here. Well, what about those 2 spaces? We've never got any money for them. You think that's going to play well in the market to a real buyer and seller? Of course not. That's why we're not bullish on this property. It is not a good performing. And the concept of the rental rates, again, this is a semantic question. It's not a value question. Look how much money is coming from the whole building, and not just the way that they calculate their rents with a 33% gross up when the market, a profitable building, a good building, is 7 to 12%. And those are the shortfalls on this property, and it has been like that since day one. So I think we're on the right track here, and that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I request a 5-minute break? That's all right.
Yeah, I was just going to say we'll have a break until I guess 5 till noon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, welcome back. We will move on to 1534 Gamble Place. So, Mr. Pohl, you can begin.
File number 244251. Roll number is 030930147775. Specific address is 1534 Gamble Place. The 2025 assessed values for $2,142,000. Before we get going on it, full disclosure on page 2, there was a post-reference sale. I did not, and I don't put any weight into post-reference sales, but it does need to be acknowledged because the INE that we sent former wasn't for this particular property because this property was part of a larger parcel that was subdivided. There was no INE sent to the individual role as it sits. This was formerly owned by PCL, and it was part of, as you see on my page 3, the highlighted in purple, the corner lot, top right hand side. It was one whole roll number prior. So when we carved that out to go along with the sale, obviously there is no income expense questionnaire because it just didn't exist for that subject. We did, or for the parcel as it exists, we just created it. So I could not bring that in. What we do have on record, it is built in 1976. We have, and this is part of the thing that I want to confirm, we have a gross floor area of 8,844 square feet, but then we have a leasable area of 8,978 square feet. So we have a greater leasable area than the gross, which can't be. If you look to the agent's brief, they also have that as well. I was hoping that maybe there'd be some clarity on that, but there's no way for me to go backwards and verify, because I didn't look at the sales listing, I didn't look at what transpired, I shouldn't be doing that, it's post reference. To go along with that, obviously, the INE doesn't exist to look at, and the agent has the same area that we have, so there may be a discrepancy in the area. We can look at that, but that's what we have on record. So, as we go along, page 3 is the photo of the property. It's just off of Waverly and McGilvery, so it's in a good location. It's an industrial park towards the end there, but there is also, as you can see from the aerial photograph, there is also office on either side of McGilvery and Gamble, I guess you'd say, of which this is well suited for frontage on. So, and PCL did retain ownership of the headquarter office that's right to the left of the building. So there was a good tenancy group in that area on either side of the frontages as you go down the Gilbury. Page 4 just shows some exterior photos of the building. I did not have any interior photos. I just relied on some older stock photos that we have in place. As you can see, the signage on page 4 was taken down. As well as aerial photos that we have, which is on page 6. So for comparables for office in the area, we have 23, that starts on page 7. Approaching the reference date, we have approximately 140,000 square feet total leased out area. Average CRU size is 6,000, a little over 6,000 square feet, with a median CRU size of approximately 5,000 square feet. The average rental rate is $18.74. The weighted average is $18.37. And the median is $18, with min maxes being at $15 and $25.25 for min max. Generally, that's a very tight range, and that's what you would expect given the location. On page 8, again, we have 8,978 square feet. Leasable area applied, we have model and driven $16.93 overall, which produces a PGI of $152,048. We have 6% full vacancy, which gives an effective gross income at $142,254. Expenses at 3%, shortfall at $8. Gives a net operating income of $133,677. And capitalized at 5.6% gives a value roundly to $2,387,000. With that, it's a pretty simple explanation of how we came to that value. That'll move the questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Yes. Sorry. Now the size of it. So you weren't able to figure that one out either, were you then?
No, I looked. It looks like it has been that's what's been for long as far as I look back. I didn't have any interior photos. I didn't have anything to work from. I reviewed the replot of obviously the carbon of the parcel. I couldn't make a determination. It's not that far off as far as gross, because I mean,
Right, because there's no basement, there's no room for mezzanine.
It's not that much of an error, but I mean, barely.
Yeah, okay.
Larger.
No, we just take numbers from what we read it from the assessment. But okay. Page I want to know the date of these pictures were taken. Were these pictures there's an aerial photograph on page 6. Do you have the date of that? The two of them?
That would be current. That would just be whenever they did it. That's just an aerial photo from how they do it. Same as far as also on page 6, that's a geometry photo. Again, I don't have the exact dates of when they've done that. But it would have been for the reassessment cycle prior, right? But I'm not relying on anything other than showing.
No, I just want.
And then of course I have to explain why we don't have an income expense questionnaire, because I can't produce one, we don't have.
Right.
it.
So you don't have, now the other pictures, on page, 4, that's the PCL sign is down, so that's going to be in the period of new ownership. You
I
figure?
can't confirm that because maybe
Okay.
PCL hasn't been occupying this building for a number of
Right.
years. And that's why they took their signage off and it's may have been on market. I don't know. I did not research the sale. Because it's post reference. As soon as I see it's post reference, no weight is given. I don't bias myself by reviewing it.
Right, okay.
Not appropriate.
On that page, 6, can you identify on the top picture, what is located to the immediate left of the building?
That would be PCL's headquarters office.
No, the top of page 6.
Top of page 6, that's the subject property highlighted the red box.
Yes, to the left of the building, the immediate left. I don't know if you have better resolution. To me, it looks like a container and some
Sea can
office
trailer?
debris. Does that
Sorry,
look like?
I can't hear you.
It looks like a container and some construction material, and I was just wondering if you had a better picture than I do and
No,
confirm that.
that looks like a sea can trailer container to me as well.
And in front of it, it looks like fiberglass and wood. I'm not sure.
Given its PCL ownership, probably around that time, maybe they were doing something here. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. On page 8, was this all done by the model?
Yes.
So it looks like the premise ID, since the plan area is 4422, the one of these premise IDs is identified as 4489. So it appears that that might be an error, or I guess. And then the other one adds up to the same thing, 4489.
I wouldn't necessarily go by that, but it does look like it's one full floor and then the other two are just
Yeah.
broken out.
When this model was prepared, was there just a single occupant for the building?
Not sure when PCL would have vacated the space.
Well, the rents range from 1490 to 1936. Would the rents show a lower value if your model called it just one area of 8978?
Be a nominal change. I couldn't say. I'd have to rerun the number.
Okay. And the vacancy is this is from OFS as well, your standard?
Yes.
And you can confirm that OFS is a fairly broad range of property types?
Yes, it is. You could have some very well do OFSs and you could have some very old OFSs that have they're not homogeneous throughout the.
No, it's a broad range. Okay. And you also, now is the OFS, is there a difference between, yes, so this is OFS suburbs, which differs from OFS downtown then, is that correct?
We do have some OFSs downtown and there's some debate whether their vacancy is appropriate for downtown or not. There's less of them obviously, but OFS does stand for, office suburban.
Okay, if I can interrupt here, I've been informed there's time constraints on this boardroom that's needed for a 1 o'clock hearing, so we can't go much past 12:30. So if we can expedite.
I wouldn't worry about that. It's probably for me.
Well, the secretary does require some time to set up.
Okay, yeah, there's a broad range for OFS, yes.
Yeah, okay. And the page 10, the schedule, then this is a suburban OFS. Would this be classified as B in your rating system?
In my rating system, it would, well, I mean, I would individually want to review it, and I can't. I've been on site, I haven't never reviewed owner prop. I would range this as a B, higher B, given the tendency that was in the location, the tenancy that was there prior, being PCL. I'm assuming they keep up with their property. They're a good ownership group. I would not assume they wouldn't let it fall into this state of disrepair. So all things being said, I would say it's a better quality property, yes.
Those are my questions.
Okay, questions, Ms. Warhun?
Well, just clarification that page 1 states 2142 and his workup shows 2387. Or 87.
Yeah. Yeah, there could be, like, this is live, so if there was any changes made, you know, it would be accounted for that, but we're not asking for the 2387. I apologize, I should have clarified that. It should be 2142 as that's what we released.
Okay, thank you.
That may have something to do with again, I'm not looking at anything post-reference, I can't. But if there was any tendencies that occurred after the fact, we were to go over in space, maybe that is some of the gross area versus leasable area discrepancy, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good catch there. Mr. Nell.
No questions, thanks, been answered.
Okay, and I was going to ask on your valuation page, you have an NOI, well, not an NOI, total rent of 152,048, and the next line you use 151,334. And your final value, which was the incorrect value, was based on the 151. But now that kind of becomes moot.
That's wouldn't attribute to the difference that you see. I'm thinking that most likely post-reference that the possible owner occupier went in and did something, and that would have changed the bids, which would have skewed it a little bit, but.
Okay. All right, let's proceed and see if we can get through our agenda today. So Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. I don't have an answer on the building size, but I do think it's 8842 after or looking at this. We never picked it up either, but the building was purchased from PCL, and I have some.
Again, we can't do any reference to the post-reference sale.
No, it's nothing to do with value. Don't worry about that. But I just wanted to give you the notes that the owner provided me verbally. It would be very short. So when they purchased it, it was one builder selling it to another builder, but there was no invasive inspection. When an invasive inspection means you cut holes in the wall and you look for stuff. After purchase, they discovered some defects in the property that required remedy that they weren't aware of. So when I was pointing out the pictures on the assessor's page 6, that is the repair, evidence of the repair that's underway. Essentially, there's a cavity between the
that's still post-reference information, is
No,
it
it's
not?
physical information. It's physical condition.
Okay.
So there's a cavity, a 7-inch cavity between the inside brick and the outside stucco covering. And it was supposed to, they looked at plans, indicate that it was filled with insulation, a 2x4 studding and insulation. When they had an opportunity to investigate, they found that there was a void there. And rather than insulation as required under the plan, there was a glued on board, which was only an R10 capable insulation. So the space was inferior from what they were assuming they were getting, and there's a great deal of repair needed, and they are in litigation with the vendor on this matter. But this does speak to the quality of, because you're going to look at the quality of what it is today. So they bought by the way, the sale price was below the assessment, even though it was post-reference, but they bought
We don't need to know anything about the sale price.
I realized that. I wanted to slip it in because
No, you cannot slip it in.
The issue, though, is they have a substandard building. And we're valuing it on that basis as a substandard building. We're looking at a rent of 12 on the main and 950 on the upper level. And there are some rents that we've listed below, and they're pictures and rent rolls. These are all in the neighborhood. These are 125 Fennel is a newly constructed flex warehouse finished as office. 1465 Buffalo is partially, it was a converted warehouse, partially it was built to suit as office. And the rents, I know you can barely read them, but point out that the rents are quoted here. Okay, no, I see some of the rents are quoted a mix of different calculations. Some are a rate per square foot per month. Some are a rate per annum per foot. They all support what we had. 1479 Buffalo. This was an industrial use, but it had demised walls that are load bearing, and they were the transformation to office was fairly simple. And those are the ones we looked at, all in the area. These are across the street from the subject, and this is the market for office on, we'll call it McGilvery. Buffalo is north side, and Gamble is south side. And it is an industrial area. Those are the rents supplied. The vacancy rate is from Johnson Report, and miscellaneous quality 8.4. This is a miscellaneous quality restaurant office. And the cap rate is calculated at 8%, which is a sub-class B, because it is a sub-class B building. Based not only what was discovered after sale, but the location and the use for it. It's on a frontage road, and our cap rate calculation accounted for the fact that it was on a service road rather than a main road, and that the quality and condition were not up to standard for a good quality office space, and that is why it's capped at 8%. Owner purchased, and one last point to mention. I looked at the assessor's page 6, and the owner of this property is a friend of mine and former neighbor. That's his pickup truck in the parking lot. So that's him repairing the site, or beginning his repair of the site. That's I think this number represents what the condition is and what it would rent for in the market. That's I'm finished.
Okay, Mr. Pohl, questions?
I'll be brief, given our time constraints. Can you turn to page 3? These are industrial buildings, both your comparables, correct?
No, as I mentioned, the top one is a flex building. So when
the
it was
layout
built,
is got to be over 90%.
Sorry, when it was built, the users, the rents in there, they had their option of how they'd like their finish and fit up done. So some selected warehousing style, some selected mixed use, some selected office, and then they were rented on that basis. There's no free rents on anyone. And the ones below, the bottom one was purpose built as office, and the one on page 4 was parts of it were purpose built as office, parts of it were as a printing operation, and that is in the basement.
Yeah, I can ask my question for your 1479 Buffalo location. You've represented this at the municipal board, correct?
Sure, yes.
You have well knowledge of the building. Are all of the comparables that you show lower level? Basement?
No. There's a mix of different ones, of different locations, and
Let me rephrase this. There is a lower level component of smaller CRU sizes, and there is an upper floor rent claims pro that seems to be absent from your. Can you point out the claims pro rent that would be here?
yeah, just a sec.
Greater than a $15 range? Last I checked.
Oh, no, Claims Pro wasn't an arm's length transaction. I'm looking at the Alliance of Exporters on Unit 200, and I've got 83 cents a foot per month. So that's 0.83 times 12 is $9.96, $10 a square. And the other ones that you were talking about on the lower level, it's not basement. You can see in the picture that's a bi-level.
So
It's
again,
below grade, right? Step down,
this
step
your
up.
property has no basement or bi-level areas. They're all, in my opinion, lower level grade.
Well, you're testifying something you know nothing about. There's a split level configuration to it, and you can see it in the picture quite easily.
Given the time constraints, that's all the questions I have. I will have summary.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Werhan, rather.
Mr. Chair, you're off video. Just, I'm not sure if you realize that, but I have no questions.
Am I off video?
You have been, yes, sir.
I don't know why I'm off video.
You were caught in
Hear
a
you, I can hear
discussion,
you.
froze.
Yeah. My camera is working. It's working. You're right. Well, there I come back.
There you go.
I had to reboot my video for some reason. Okay, and I wouldn't want everybody to, not see my wonderful face here. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our last property then, of 100 Scurfield. So, Mr. Poole.
100 Scorefield, file number 243958. Roll number is 030651577700. 2025 assessed value is for $4,506,000. We have effective years built in 1980, or seriously, actually years built in 1988. In addition, put on in 2006. If we go to the leasable area, it is the same as the gross area, 17,986. We have on page 2, the income and expense questionnaire indicating its gross rent. And on page 3, the tenancies that are in place as gross. We obviously do on a net rent basis. Photos of the subject property is on page 4. 2 separate and distinct buildings. Shown also on page 5. So, office use, we're looking at on page 5. Comparables 1 through 23. It's in the Pembina, Gordon, Waverly area. We have the same comparables at 140,000 total roughly square foot, with CRU average size of 6,100 square feet and median of around 5,000 square feet. We have an average rent of $18.74, weighted average of $18.37, and a median of $18, with a min-max of 15 and 25. So when we go to page 6, we see that the 17,986 square feet, we have an average rent model driven applied at $17.97, which gives us a net gross income of $323,244. And our same standard parameters do apply. Vacancy at 6%, which produces effective gross income of $303,849. Expenses at 3%. Non-recoverable, I should say. Shortfall at $8 is a net operating income of $286,101, capped at 6.35%. which gives us back to our value at 4,506,000. With that, given the time constraint, I think we've proven the marketplace at around $18, and the subject property is in at that. So that will be questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Yes. Page 6 and 7, was this all done by the model?
Right.
And in this case, the premise IDs, they do match up with tenancies, I suppose. That's shown on your page 3.
So, yes.
Yeah, okay, so those match up. And again, this is OFS, so on this building. That's why the 6% is there, I take it. And did you review the statement?
Yes.
So I'm looking at it, the statement which indicates, well, they've totaled 218,000 as full. Was there any consideration given to that, what they've submitted?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You broke up at the beginning.
Was there any consideration given to their actual income as full at 218,000?
Their net operating income?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, obviously I've looked at that, but I'm also looking at a long-term lease that's in place starting in 2000. And we look at it from a the simple, what would the building lease out at the reference date unencumbered by lease. I took a look at the contract as well. I took a look at the market. For what I can determine here from a net rent basis, market information indicates it'd be around $18, an $18 rent put in place. So at that point, I think it is at market. As far as the net operating income being a little lower, it is, but again, it's on a gross basis, and there is no lease in place starting in 2000.
So I'm having a hard time reading this, just a sec.
You realize the 13,000 square foot or so area is the one that started in 2000, so that would pull that down.
Well, occupancy started in 2000. Were you aware of any renewals?
All I have is what they indicated on that.
Okay. And the on that statement, did you make any commentary on whether these rents were net or gross?
They're gross.
They're gross, yes. Okay.
No, it's clear. It's clear gross. It's checked off as gross, and they indicate what they are.
Right. Okay. Right. That's those are my questions then.
Okay, Ms. Warehun, questions?
Sorry, I know none, thank you.
Mr. Nell?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, I have none. So Mr. Neufeld, your presentation.
Yes, so we were using the same income and expense form, and the site is full, and there's an error in our workup. I want to point out to you, and I will not make a change. You'll note that on our page page 3, that they're also declaring interest income and of 15,160. So their actual net operating income would be 203,280 or 60. A little bit lower than what we actually applied as a gross income. Now, the reason I won't bother making a change from the 218 is as a gross building, these non-recoverables are already in place. So you notice we put in an amount of $10,000 on page 1 for non-recoverables. So when you do a gross building workup, you're already taking the actual non-recoverables into account. So we were 15,000 too high in the income, but 10,000 too high in the expenses, and that carries forward. So the difference is we're actually overstating the income at 171, but I'm not going to change it because we should have alerted someone if we thought we wanted a lower value. We didn't. The only suggestion I was going to make here is, upon reviewing this, some of the factors in looking at this site are a little bit too aggressive. When this was first built on Scurfield, it was a horrible location because it predated the residential uses around it, because anything of this nature follows the market in the retail and other uses follow the market after the residences move in. But now that it's mature, there's more volume coming to it, so it has a bit more appeal. So the major tenant is an insurance agent. So when they moved in, business was pretty bad. Now it's better. And that's why I don't think it's locationally deficient. So I just want to change that cap rate to something that's more today, a bit more better for the market. And that's, if you look at the Colliers Bs 6.5 to 7.5, we were going to apply 7.5 to it, and that's the higher end of the scale to account for the manner in which we do our cap rates, which is to include closing costs, which artificially drive the rates lower. And it isn't the best quality site. It's not newer. It is dated. However, and they have had significant vacancy problems with the second building. At this particular time, they were full. So at that number, our value is 2,288,466. 2,288,466. Rounded to 2,288,000, 2,288,000. And that's based on actual performance. As far as how it relates to the market, this is a building that straddles the industrial areas in Scurfield with the residential areas. So you have to find a building that's comparable to it. And I live 3 blocks from this. There's nothing that's really comparable. You're not going to use the shopping center across the street or the warehouses next door. It's performing at market, and I've been there lots of times, lots of inspections, and I think our number is extremely good, accurate, at 2,288,000. I think that's it. Me?
Okay, questions, Mr. Poole?
Yeah. We didn't rely on any comparables, just the actuals.
Yes, we relied on the actual.
To confirm, we're using 17,986 square feet total. You're using 18,422 square feet, and they reported 18,227. Where did you get your number from?
One sec. Yeah, I see 18,227.
Should we be using your 18,427?
And we're using 18,427. We have a 200 square feet more. In the last reassessment period, the secondary building had a different measurement. I think that there was an additional unit in there that ended up being combined or sorry, it was split from 1 to 2, and they lost some rentable area. We left it at the previous number that we had from the last cycle. And as to what the assessment department uses, I don't know where you get the number from. Um, you're lower than, actually, I have a theory here. I think it's just all remeasuring from the second building, moving from tenancies from 1 to 2 to 3 to 1. So it's like catch it as you can.
Okay, we're kind of strapped for time here, so
Okay.
can we
With
move on?
that, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Werhun?
None, thank you.
Okay, with that, we have heard all the items on
Sorry,
today.
are you going to allow for any summarizing?
Well, we're kind of strapped for time. What summation do you wish?
Well, just if you call for it, I'll be brief when I have to speak, but I just wanted to opportunity to say some closing remarks.
Okay, Mr. Pohl, any summation?
No, other than agent didn't have any comparables for market, which was pointed out. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld.
Yes, thank you. In regard to this property, and as it refers to all the properties today, this is a suburban office issue, and the collapse of the office market globally is well noted and understood by everybody in our world today. It was a combination of factors that were all in the public domain. And my opinion is that the model is still relying on either old data or mistaken issues. Cap rates did not drop like that. Interest rates, in my evidence, clearly the interest rates being charged by the Bank of Canada went from 0.5% to 4.75% at the reference period. And a capitalization rate is comprised of the interest rate. It's all about borrowing money and rate of return on the money. So that's the major issue with the capitalization and the collapse in the market. The office is undergoing changes in use, and we're going to see a repurposing of several office buildings, as we all know, predominantly downtown, but there are also suburban offices that are undergoing this. So the model is, I believe, it's completely outdated and no longer relevant to anything that's done. It's out of touch with the marketplace. Our data was derived from people who buy and sell properties, and their vested interest is to get the best price for them. And this is what we're saying for a cap rate is we go and sell properties. And unfortunately, the city sells and buys none and sits on the sidelines and comments.
Okay, let's not get into what the city does or does not. Just keep your summation to these properties.
Okay. No, I just want to reiterate that we're active in the marketplace, and our numbers are more accurate than what the modeling makes. And I pointed out to you several errors that we've discovered along the way. I don't want to beat this to death either, but thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, and now we've heard all the properties on today's agenda, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Phoebe, can you check if we can have a spot for our deliberations?
Yeah, I'll go do that.